half debating whether I should sit in the chair or not. I injured my back, and but that's all right. Maybe if I stand still, but otherwise have a chair standing by back there. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Father.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
So, we have several readings today, and one of them is, of course, Zacchaeus. For those of us in the North Slavic tradition, this is the Sunday of Zacchaeus. In the Mediterranean tradition, it actually flip-flops. They flip-flop several readings from when we do it, but it always marks the beginning or the week before the Lenten Triodion begins, so the pre-Lenten period. So one of the points of the pre-Lenten period is for us to start preparing for Great Lent. So it gives us a fast-free week, even, right, and so forth. And even the meat fair, you might recognize the Latin term for it, carnival, right? And so, which was meant not to be total disgusting gluttons and indulgers, right? But it was meant that we are to enjoy and recognize we have periods where we do indulge and enjoy being children of the kingdom already, but then we also gird up our loins in fasting periods, because otherwise we'll get addicted to the things of this world. And so we go through those fasting periods where we restrict these things. Now, this past Sunday, many of you have heard already that, or have heard that a church was invaded basically by protesters. And I normally don't bring the news of the world, nor do I like to, into the gospel message, but I think it's crucial to understand we can't blend this age with the age to come. We remember our Lord's words that the children of this age are more shrewd than the children of God. Therefore, be wise as serpents, and be gentle as doves, or harmless as doves. Be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. And that's an important thing. Right? Because a serpent's wise, it isn't harmless. You better, if you have any eggs of anything that you actually like, birds, whatever, around, you better get, even non-venomous snakes, they're not gonna be there. Turtle eggs, whatever. So we're to be wise as serpents, but we're to be harmless as doves. And it's funny that the Lord doesn't tell us to try and be as shrewd as the children of this age, right? He asks us instead to be wise and harmless. Wise because shrewdness, we might otherwise know it as a step beyond street smarts, right? Because I personally think it's good to have some street smarts. But it's a step beyond street smarts to where your business dealings aren't quite on the up and up, right? You're getting what you can when you can and from whoever you can. And the Lord doesn't want us to be like that. So, but wisdom allows us to go on the other side of that and to arrest it, even within ourselves, but culturally. I watched 2 nights as I lie in bed. Sometimes I like falling asleep to watching TV. So in 2 parts I watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington because it's a long movie and I can't watch it all in one sitting. So last night I watched the end of it, where Jimmy Stewart is like this honest as can be guy, and he's painted because he's not playing along in the Senate. In the United States Senate, the senators have a backroom dirty deal. Imagine that. It was in the U.S. Senate of all things, right? And poor Jimmy Stewart's there in tears in a filibuster. Like, how have we desecrated this chamber, this sacred chamber, right? And, you know, that is the story of humanity from the beginning, is that we, from the fall, at least, I shouldn't say from the beginning, but because God saw, and it was good, right? But from the fall, it's been the story of humanity that we have been corrupt, and that is our default position. We take for granted because in the United States, we generally have good people, and we take for granted that that's because they were raised in a culture that's based on Christianity. People can argue that it's not, but read Tom Holland's Dominion. Tom Holland is an atheist, but he said, most certainly, like the goodness of generally that you encounter people who are going to help you, like if you, you stumble and fall and someone comes and helps you pick up your groceries. I mean, we have lots of nice people. If you break down beside the road, you're likely going to have to say, hey, do you need to call somebody? You might have 3-4 people. You think that happens in other countries? I gotta tell you, most others no. And so we can't take for granted that actually it is the Holy Spirit moving culturally, and we don't want to lose that. We really don't. Of course, it starts with the old number 1, not losing it. You know, Zacchaeus was this tax collector, which back then, they're basically all cheats. And if you weren't, guess what? You were going to get run out of being a tax collector. Just like Jimmy Stewart was, they tried to run him out of the U.S. Senate because he wasn't corrupt. He wasn't playing the game. Zacchaeus, however, said, you know what? I know I'm going to get fired tomorrow, because the way being a tax collector worked was the tax collector would skim, he'd overtax people, he'd put some in his pocket, and he'd give some to his boss, right? And his boss gave kickbacks to his boss from all this dishonest money. I know, it sounds like RICO, like organized crime, right? The mafia. That's basically what being a tax collector was back then. And Zacchaeus, who obviously was of short stature, so you know, it's interesting. I read somewhere that you know, he was approximately 3'9", and I'm like, someone said, you know, I'm like, where'd you get that from? I think, you know, I'm not quite sure that's part of the holy tradition there, but anyway, he was a short guy, but he was also kind of a brute, right? And Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector. So, not only was he, he basically muscling people for money, but also he had underlings, all of his underlings. Hey, you're late on the kickbacks that I'm supposed to get, right? You want to be fired next week? I know that you went to this whole block. I know you got money from there. So Zacchaeus, to give that up, it was a pretty good gig. And he was powerful as a chief tax collector. And it says, and he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. So still to this day, if you're in Jericho, there's this Phoenician glass factory And if you just go a few buildings over and across the street, you'll still see that sycamore tree. That 2,500-year-old sycamore tree that Zacchaeus climbed up is there in Jericho to this very day. Although it is fenced in, so the church grounds that it's on, has to be open for you to go touch it or whatever, but you can still see it from the road because it's right by the road. And so he ran ahead and climbed up this sycamore tree to see him, for Jesus was going to pass that way. It says that when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. And so he made haste and came down. And you can imagine, Jesus' disciples were like, really? This guy's been shaking us down for years, and you're going to his house. You've never been to my house, Jesus. We've been following you around, and you're going to this guy who's shaking us down for all these years. Our enemy, the chief tax collector, and the one who runs the whole show. So Zacchaeus made haste and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained. As you can imagine. Saying, he has gone to be the guest with this man who is a sinner. So then Zacchaeus and said to the Lord, behold, Lord. So look, Lord, behold. So this means Zacchaeus likely had a lot of this money in a bag or whatever with him. This shakedown money that he had. And he's saying, look, in the text, look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor. And if I've taken anyone, and all that I've taken from anyone by false accusation, I will restore it fourfold. Well, that shut up Jesus' critics. And we can imagine, it seems to indicate he was doing it right there. Like, I overcharged you this past week. Whatever, 10 shekels, and here's 40 shekels. And I'll get the rest to you for all the other years that I did this to you. And he's giving it out, right? There's this miracle that's happening. And people can't believe it. Like, who is this Jesus that this horrible person, Zacchaeus, who we can't stand it, has done all these things? And not only has he given us back our money, he's giving us back 4 times the amount that he shortchanged us all those years. It's amazing. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which is lost. So, those people who came into that church last week, because there was an ICE agent who was a member, right? I get to distill the story. That was the reason for the protesters invading the church. I want you to think what would happen if we had that come in here. The likelihood is low. But if we had that, we had a bunch of protesters come here. Thank God we're in the middle of nowhere, right? So the likelihood's low. But how would we treat these protesters, right? I mean, I heard a lot of talking heads this, they should have run them out of that church, right? And everything else. How about we hand them a prayer book and say, join us in prayer, right? If they don't, then call the trespass line, right? Because if Zacchaeus, the most corrupt person on the face of the earth, can encounter God in prayer, that's us talking to God, and encounter him in his word, which is God talking to us, so can he with any form of corruption that we have on this earth. How is your faith? Is it active enough to test it? So, I'd say when you're out and about and encountering people just on your own, and you see things, maybe say a prayer to God. And a third path that hasn't been thought of either stop this person, get them out of here, or just let them run roughshod over our church. We wouldn't let them do that, right? That's not right. Let all things be done decently and orderly. But a third path of, you know what? You think you're here to protest, but God brought you here to pray. Here's a prayer book. Join us. Just thinking, let God inform your heart as we enter into this pre-Lenten period. And through the week, when you're out and about, when you're at work, when you're at the store, look for God in front of you. Look for the opportunities that He has placed before you. Because surely I tell you, a greater miracle than Christ's healings on other fronts was this miracle of Zacchaeus, the most corrupt man in all of Israel, turning to God. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.